Hello there. This month, the question that we've been asked is to discuss a challenging client that we have had and the lessons we learned and what advice we can give to the soft tissue world in terms of managing that. So I want to think about, and I've chosen a client that I think really sums up, epitomizes some of the key values and professional conduct issues that we need to be aware of and constantly engage in terms of being able to give and deliver a better service. So the difficult client was born out of a perception of mine that the client was being a difficult client. And it all started with the initial questioning, the consultant or consultation aspect of a treatment with a client. And I tended to ask questions at that point in a set way, not really, or at least I wasn't aware of at that point, attending to the real issues. So I used to ask questions in a mechanical way. And I noted that the client I was working with didn't answer the questions. And I perceived that as that client being difficult, not giving me answers to questions that I believed were necessary for me to make informed choices about that client's care. And I kept on going on about it. And at one point, I even made a claim that if you don't answer these questions, I may not be able to help you. And I realized that time is short. I have another client waiting, and this is taking a lot of time. At which point the client said, well, if that's your attitude, I'll leave. And they proceeded to leave. We then spoke on the phone and we went through a really useful and relevant understanding of continual learning when we enter relationship or professional setting with those giving and those receiving. And what I learned out of that is that the question stems I was asking were not really relevant to the case or that moment in time of how that client was feeling. And what I failed to do was to listen with what I now term clinical curiosity. In other words, inquiring, allowing that client to speak and for me to pick up on the salient or important threads of what is being said, and then invite that client into exploring with me deeper and different types of questions. I now practice that in a continual way within my clinical setting. And what it's led to is a new way of thinking, a new way of working, a new way of really attending to the client. And the client now feels as though I care, I deeply care, and that I only want the best for them. And that is a critical skill, because at times we've got so many questions that are written down on a consultation form that we tend to lose sight of the human in front of us. We tend to lose sight of the needs that that human requires in order for us to make informed choices about the way that we can attend and support them and treat them. So lessons learned is at times less is more. We may have trigger questions that are important to ask. We may get a client to complete a questionnaire. But when we go through it, when we explore together, when we enter that relationship, that therapeutic bond, we do that to try and create a curiosity around, I'm curious about what has happened with you. I'm curious to know maybe of past childhood experiences. I'm curious to know within my own scope of practice how that particular issue has impacted you now. And maybe that could be the root cause of why you experience what it is you've experienced. So although I perceived a client initially as being a difficult client, I think the learning that has emerged as a result of me reflecting upon that experience has been incredibly useful for how I now work. And that is about thinking about what questions become useful in helping me make informed choices about practice and clinical decision making. So to end off with, my words of wisdom or advice at this point is, I think we living in a world where we totally focus on trying to give answers, that we've lost the ability to ask relevant questions. And now is the time to question the way we question and think about the purpose and meaning of what we are aiming to achieve. I think if we understand why we're asking certain things and the client can see why we're asking a certain question, that will become more useful in helping us become more informed about what we may be able to do or what support we may be able to offer, or more importantly, whether we can, through our questioning, identify barriers to how we treat. For example, red flags or other precipitating issues that are useful to us. So when you practice next, take some time to question the way that you question.